The gunshot echoed through the dusty streets of Gunnison, Colorado, as Olivia Anderson stumbled backward, clutching her chest. Not from a bullet wound, but from the pain of betrayal as she watched her fiancé ride away with the bank's money and her family heirloom, a heart-shaped ruby pendant her grandmother had given her. The year was 1878, and as the cruel summer sun beat down on her tear-streaked face, she didn't know that fate had already set in motion the arrival of a man who would change everything. "He took everything," she whispered to the empty street, her voice breaking. "Everything." Samuel Young pulled his horse to a stop at the edge of town, dust billowing around him as he surveyed Gunnison. After 3 years on the trail as a bounty hunter, towns were starting to look the same hopeful facades hiding desperate hearts. But something about this place felt different. Perhaps it was the way the mountains cradled the settlement, or maybe it was simply that he was tired of chasing other men's demons while running from his own. The sheriff's office was his first stop, as it always was. Sheriff Miller was a barrel-chested man with gray at his temples and eyes that had seen enough to fill several lifetimes. "Another bounty hunter," the sheriff sighed, looking Samuel up and down. "We've had 3 pass through this week alone." Samuel removed his hat, revealing dark hair in need of a cut. "I'm tracking James Holloway. Word is he passed through here recently." The sheriff's eyes narrowed. "You're about 2 days too late. Holloway came through all right. Charmed half the town, including Miss Anderson from the general store. Then yesterday he robbed our bank and took off with her family's heirloom. Miss Anderson's beside herself." Samuel nodded, absorbing the information. "Which way did he head?" "Northwest, toward the mountains." "But listen here, Young, we don't need another gunslinger bringing trouble. Miss Anderson's suffered enough." As Samuel left the sheriff's office, he caught sight of a woman standing outside the general store, her auburn hair catching the sunlight as she wiped her eyes with a handkerchief. Something about her stopped him in his tracks, a certain dignity in the way she held herself despite her obvious heartbreak. Olivia noticed the stranger watching her and quickly composed herself, straightening her simple blue dress. "Can I help you, sir?" Her voice was stronger than she felt. "Samuel Young, madam," he said, approaching with his hat in hand. "I understand you've had some trouble with James Holloway." Her green eyes flashed with pain. "If by trouble you mean being fooled by a liar and a thief, then yes. Are you a friend of his?" The suspicion in her voice was sharp. "No, madam, I'm tracking him for a bounty out of Denver. He robbed a stagecoach there, shot the driver." Olivia's face paled. "I didn't know, he seemed so." She couldn't finish the sentence. "They usually do," Samuel said gently. "Men like that make their living being what others want them to be." A tear slipped down her cheek, which she quickly brushed away. "He took my heart," she whispered, then clarified, "my grandmother's pendant, a ruby heart. It's all I had left of her." Samuel felt something shift inside him, a feeling unfamiliar after years of emotional distance. "I'm going after him," he said. "I'll get your pendant back." "Why would you do that for a stranger?" she asked, studying his face. "Because sometimes doing the right thing is its own reward," he answered simply. Olivia watched him mount his horse, an impressive chestnut stallion. "Mr. Young," she called out, "Holloway is dangerous. He may seem charming, but there's something cold in his eyes." Samuel nodded. "I've seen that look before, Miss Anderson. Don't worry about me." "At least let me pack you some supplies," she insisted, disappearing into the store before he could object. When she returned with a package wrapped in brown paper, their fingers brushed as she handed it to him. Neither acknowledged the unexpected jolt that passed between them. "Thank you, Miss Anderson. I'll be back with your pendant." As Samuel rode out of town, he couldn't explain why retrieving a sentimental trinket for a woman he'd just met suddenly seemed as important as the substantial bounty on Holloway's head. The mountain trail was treacherous, but Samuel was an experienced rider. By nightfall, he had tracked Holloway to an abandoned mining camp. Carefully tethering his horse away from the camp, he approached on foot, his revolver ready. Holloway wasn't alone. 2 rough-looking men sat with him around a fire, passing a bottle between them. Samuel crept closer, staying in the shadows. "That Anderson woman was easy pickings," Holloway laughed, holding up a red gem that caught the firelight. "Batting her eyelashes at me like some lovesick schoolgirl, and this little bauble will fetch a fine price in Denver." The rage that surged through Samuel surprised him. He'd tracked plenty of despicable men, but something about Holloway's casual cruelty toward Olivia made his blood boil. He waited, watching as the men eventually drank themselves into a stupor. Moving silently, Samuel approached the sleeping men. He carefully took the ruby pendant from Holloway's pocket, but as he was retreating, his boot dislodged a stone. Holloway's eyes snapped open. Who the hell was all he managed before Samuel's fist connected with his jaw? The commotion woke the other men and chaos erupted. Samuel found himself fighting all three, his fists connecting with flesh as he tried to make his way back to his gun, which had been knocked from his hand. A shot rang out, grazing Samuel's arm. He hissed in pain but managed to retrieve his revolver and fire back. One of Holloway's companions fell, clutching his leg. The other turned and fled into the darkness. Holloway himself pulled a knife, lunging at Samuel with deadly intent. They grappled, rolling dangerously close to the fire. Samuel felt the blade slice his side, but adrenaline kept him moving. With a powerful blow, he knocked Holloway unconscious. Breathing heavily, Samuel bound Holloway's hands and feet, then attended to his own wounds. The cut on his side was deep, and blood soaked through his shirt. The arm wound was superficial by comparison. After tying Holloway to his own horse, Samuel retrieved the pendant from where it had fallen during the struggle. The heart-shaped ruby gleamed in the moonlight, and he carefully tucked it into his shirt pocket, close to his own heart. The ride back to Gunnison was slow and painful. Samuel's vision blurred occasionally from blood loss, but he was determined to make it. By the time the town came into view, it was nearly dawn, and he was barely staying upright in the saddle. Olivia had been unable to sleep, her mind filled with worry not just for her grandmother's pendant, but increasingly for the stranger who had ridden out on her behalf. She was arranging merchandise in the store window when she saw the horses approaching, one carrying an upright rider, the other a bound man. She rushed outside as Samuel pulled his horse to a stop in front of the sheriff's office. Only then did she notice the bloodstains on his shirt. "Mr. Young," she gasped, reaching up to steady him as he dismounted unsteadily. "I believe this belongs to you," he said, his voice weak as he pulled the pendant from his pocket and placed it in her hand. Olivia's eyes filled with tears as she looked at the pendant, then back at Samuel's pale face. "You're hurt." "It's nothing," he murmured, just before his knees buckled. The next few hours were a blur for Samuel. He was vaguely aware of being carried to the doctor's office, of Olivia's worried face hovering near as the doctor stitched his wounds, of her soft hand holding his as fever took hold. When he finally regained full consciousness, he was in a small bedroom, sunlight streaming through lace curtains. Olivia was dozing in a chair beside the bed, the ruby pendant hanging around her neck. "Miss Anderson," he croaked, his throat dry. Olivia started awake. "Oh, thank goodness," she breathed, immediately reaching for a glass of water on the bedside table. "You've been unconscious for 2 days." The doctor was worried about infection. As she helped him drink, Samuel became acutely aware of her closeness, the faint scent of lavender that clung to her hair. "Where am I?" he asked once his thirst was quenched. "My home," she answered. "It's above the store. I couldn't leave you at the doctor's office, they needed the space, and she hesitated, "I felt responsible for your condition." Samuel attempted to sit up but grimaced as pain shot through his side. "You're not responsible for anything, Miss Anderson. Holloway is a wanted man." "I was doing my job." "The sheriff sent a telegram about the bounty," Olivia said. "The money arrived yesterday." Samuel nodded, pleased at least that his efforts hadn't been financially wasted. "And Holloway, on his way to Denver to face trial along with one of his companions." "The other got away." She touched the pendant at her throat. "You kept your promise. I can never thank you enough." "Seeing it where it belongs is thanks enough," he said sincerely. Over the next week, Samuel regained his strength under Olivia's attentive care. She brought him meals, changed his bandages, and sat with him in the evenings, reading aloud from her favorite books. He found himself looking forward to these quiet moments, watching the animated expressions cross her face as she read. Olivia, too, discovered herself enjoying their time together. Unlike Holloway, who had bombarded her with flattery and grand promises, Samuel was quiet and thoughtful. When he did speak, his words carried weight. She learned about his life before bounty hunting, how he'd been a rancher, until drought and rustlers had taken everything, how he'd turned to tracking men for money but never lost his sense of justice. "What will you do when you're fully recovered?" She asked one evening as they sat on the small balcony outside her home, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and purple. Samuel considered the question. "I'm not sure, there's always another bounty to collect." "Is that what you want, to keep chasing other people's demons?" Her question struck a chord. "No," he admitted. "I've been thinking about settling somewhere, maybe starting over." Olivia's heart quickened. Gunnison's a good place for new beginnings. Their eyes met and something unspoken passed between them, but Samuel looked away first, troubled. "Holloway hurt you. I wouldn't want you to confuse gratitude with something else." Olivia reached over and placed her hand on his. "I'm not confused, Samuel. James Holloway told me what I wanted to hear. You showed me who you are through your actions." Before he could respond, they were interrupted by Sheriff Miller, who needed to speak with Samuel about some final details regarding Holloway's capture. The moment was broken, but the warmth of Olivia's hand lingered on Samuel's skin. As his recovery progressed, Samuel began helping around the store. His presence deterred the occasional troublemaker, and his strong arms were useful for moving heavy merchandise. Customers began to associate him with the place, and Olivia noticed her business increasing, particularly among the town's female population. "Mrs. Henderson asked if you were my new business partner," Olivia mentioned one afternoon as they stocked shelves together. Samuel's hands stilled. "What did you tell her?" "That we hadn't discussed it," she replied, watching him carefully. "But I wouldn't be opposed to the idea." He looked at her, really looked at her, taking in the hope and uncertainty in her eyes. "Olivia," he said softly, using her first name for the first time, "I don't have much to offer. My life's been about moving on, not putting down roots." "Sometimes roots grow when you're not looking for them," she said. "You've been here almost a month now." It was true. His wounds had healed weeks ago, yet he'd found reasons to stay: a leaky roof that needed fixing, inventory that needed organizing, a woman whose smile made him want to be a better man. That evening, a telegram arrived for Samuel. Another bounty, this one substantial enough to buy a small ranch. He stared at the paper, conflicted. A month ago, he would have been on his horse within the hour. He found Olivia closing up the store. She knew immediately something was wrong from his expression. "You're leaving," she said, her voice flat as she continued counting the day's earnings. "I haven't decided," he answered honestly. Olivia finally looked up at him, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Don't stay out of obligation, Samuel. I survived before you came. I'll survive after you go." Her words cut deeper than he expected. "Is that what you think, that I feel obligated? Why else would a man like you stay in a small town like Gunnison? There's nothing for you here." "There's you," he said simply. The coins in Olivia's hand clattered to the counter. "What are you saying, Samuel?" He moved closer, his heart pounding harder than it had during any gunfight. "I'm saying that somewhere between bringing back your pendant and now, I found something I wasn't looking for, something I never thought I'd find again after losing everything." "And what's that?" she whispered. "Hope," he said, reaching for her hand. "A reason to stop running. A reason to build something instead of just surviving." Olivia's fingers intertwined with his. "I'm afraid," she admitted. "The last man who said sweet things to me stole more than just a necklace." Samuel gently touched the pendant at her throat. "He took your heart," he said, echoing her words from their first meeting. Olivia nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. "He took my heart," she confirmed, her voice barely audible. Samuel moved closer, his free hand coming up to brush away her tear. "Then I'll give you mine instead," he whispered, the words flowing naturally, as if his heart had been waiting to offer itself to her. Their first kiss was tentative, a gentle press of lips that quickly deepened as years of loneliness melted away. When they finally parted, both were breathless. "Stay," Olivia said, "not out of obligation, stay because you want to." "I want to," Samuel assured her, "more than I've wanted anything in a long time." The telegram about the bounty remained unanswered, eventually forgotten on the bedside table as Samuel and Olivia's relationship blossomed. The town of Gunnison watched with approval as the pair became inseparable. Samuel's steady presence at the store became expected, and he proved to have a good head for business, suggesting improvements that increased their profits. In the evenings, they would walk together through town, sometimes stopping at the small restaurant for dinner. other times bringing a picnic to the meadow just outside town where wildflowers grew in abundance. Samuel told Olivia about his dreams of having his own ranch again someday, and she shared her hopes of expanding the store to include books and medicines. Their courtship wasn't without challenges. Samuel's past occasionally caught up with him when former Bounty's associates passed through town looking for revenge, and Olivia struggled with trust, sometimes pulling away when her fears overwhelmed her. One such incident occurred 3 months after Samuel had decided to stay. A woman arrived in town claiming to be an old flame of his from Denver. Her stories of their supposed relationship planted seeds of doubt in Olivia's mind, especially when Samuel admitted he knew the woman, though not in the way she claimed. "I want to believe you," Olivia said that night, her voice tight with unshed tears. "But James made me promises too, and I believed him completely." Samuel took her hands, his expression serious. "I understand your doubts, Olivia, but I'm not Holloway. I've never lied to you, and I never will." "How can I be sure?" she asked, vulnerability plain on her face. "Because I love you," he said simply, the words emerging for the first time. "I love you enough to wait as long as it takes for you to trust that." The declaration hung between them, honest and raw. Olivia searched his eyes and found only truth there. "I love you too," she whispered. "I think I have since you came back with my pendant, half dead but still thinking of your promise to me." The woman from Denver left town the next day, disappointed that her schemes had failed. Samuel later learned she had been hired by an old enemy hoping to drive a wedge between him and Olivia. Instead, the incident had only strengthened their bond. As autumn painted the mountains in brilliant colors, Samuel took Olivia riding to his favorite spot overlooking the valley. There, with the world spread out below them, he knelt on one knee and presented her with a simple gold ring. "I'm not a wealthy man," he said, "and I can't promise life will always be easy, but I can promise that my heart is yours completely and forever. Will you marry me, Olivia?" Tears of joy streamed down her face as she nodded. "Yes," she breathed. 1,000 times yes. Their wedding in the town church was the social event of the season. Everyone in Gunnison attended, even Sheriff Miller, who had initially been suspicious of Samuel but had come to respect him. Olivia wore her grandmother's pendant with her simple white dress, and Samuel couldn't take his eyes off her as she walked down the aisle toward him. The ceremony was brief but meaningful, their vows spoken with conviction born of overcoming doubt and finding trust. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, the cheers from the assembled townspeople nearly raised the roof. The celebration continued well into the night, with dancing and feasting under lantern light in the town square. As Samuel twirled Olivia around the makeshift dance floor, he marveled at how his life had changed in just a few short months. "Happy, Mrs. Young?" he asked, loving the sound of her new name. "Happier than I ever thought possible," she replied, her eyes reflecting the stars above. With the money Samuel had saved from his bounty hunting days, combined with the profits from the store, they were able to purchase a small property just outside town. It wasn't much, a modest house and enough land for a few horses and a garden, but it was theirs. Samuel continued to help run the store while also working their land. He discovered that years of tracking had made him observant of the natural world, skills that served him well as he planted their first crops. Olivia expanded the store's offerings as she had dreamed, adding a section for books that quickly became popular among the town's residents. Their first year of marriage brought both joy and hardship. A harsh winter tested their resilience, and at one point, Samuel had to ride out in a blizzard to help a neighboring family whose roof had collapsed under the snow. He returned with frostbite that Olivia treated tenderly, her heart in her throat at how close she'd come to losing him. Spring brought renewal and unexpected news. Olivia was with child. Samuel's reaction was one of pure joy, lifting her off her feet and spinning her around the kitchen before gently setting her down with a look of concern. "I didn't hurt you, did I?" He worried, his hands hovering over her still flat stomach. Olivia laughed, placing his palms against her abdomen. "No, you didn't hurt us. The doctor says I'm healthy as a horse." Samuel's expression softened with wonder. "A baby," he whispered, "our baby." As Olivia's pregnancy progressed, Samuel became increasingly protective, insisting on taking over more of her duties at the store and hiring help for the heavier work. Olivia tolerated his hovering with good humor, knowing it came from love. The baby, a boy they named Thomas after Olivia's father, arrived on a stormy night in October. Samuel paced outside the bedroom as the midwife attended to Olivia, each cry from his wife piercing his heart. When he was finally allowed in, the sight of Olivia holding their son, exhausted but radiant, brought him to his knees beside the bed. "He has your eyes," Olivia said softly as Samuel gazed in wonder at the tiny, perfect face. "And your strength," Samuel replied, gently touching the downy head. "He's magnificent." Parenthood brought new challenges and deeper joy than either had imagined possible. Thomas was a good baby, but the demands of caring for him while maintaining the store and their small farm left both Samuel and Olivia exhausted. Yet they found that working together, supporting each other through the difficult nights and celebrating the small victories, only strengthened their bond. When Thomas was 6 months old, trouble found them again. James Holloway, who had escaped from prison in Denver, appeared at the store one day while Samuel was working their land. Olivia was alone except for Thomas, sleeping in his cradle behind the counter. "Well, well," Holloway sneered, his once handsome face now marred by a prison scar. "Olivia Anderson, or is it young now? I heard you married the bounty hunter." Olivia's blood ran cold, but she kept her expression neutral. "What do you want, James? There's nothing for you here." "I want what's owed me," he said, his eyes darting around the store. "Your husband cost me years of my life, and I never did get to sell that pretty little trinket." His gaze fixed on the ruby pendant that still hung around Olivia's neck. Thomas stirred in his cradle, making a small noise. Holloway's eyes widened. "And what's this, a little one?" My, you have been busy." "Leave," Olivia said firmly, her hand moving beneath the counter where Samuel had installed a small derringer for emergencies. "The sheriff will be making his rounds any minute," Holloway laughed. "No, he won't. I watched him ride out of town an hour ago. It's just you and me, and the little one." He moved toward the counter, but Olivia was quicker. She pulled out the derringer and aimed it steadily at his chest. "I'm not the same woman you fooled before, James. I won't let you hurt my family." Holloway's smile faltered. "You won't shoot me, Olivia. You don't have it in you." "For my child, I have it in me," she said with quiet conviction. "Now back away and leave town. I won't tell you again." The standoff might have ended there if Thomas hadn't chosen that moment to let out a loud wail. The distraction was enough for Holloway to lunge across the counter, grabbing for the gun. They struggled and the derringer went off, the bullet splintering the ceiling. Holloway wrested the gun from Olivia's grasp and pointed it at her, his expression twisted with rage. "You should have been sweeter to me, Olivia," he growled. "We could have had something good." "We never would have had anything good," she retorted, her eyes darting to Thomas, who was now crying in earnest. "You're incapable of it." Holloway's finger tightened on the trigger, but before he could fire, the door burst open. Samuel stood there, his own gun drawn, his expression deadly. "Drop it, Holloway," he commanded. "Now." Holloway yanked Olivia against him, using her as a shield, the derringer pressed to her temple. "Well, if it isn't the hero," he sneered. "Put your gun down or your wife dies." Samuel's eyes met Olivia's. In that silent exchange, a plan formed. Samuel slowly lowered his gun to the floor, keeping his hands visible. "Let her go. This is between you and me." "No, I think I'll take her with me," Holloway said. "Insurance for my safe passage. Maybe I'll even take the kid too, raise him right, unlike his fool of a father." At the threat to their son, Olivia acted. She stomped hard on Holloway's instep while simultaneously jabbing her elbow into his ribs. The move caught him off guard, and his grip loosened enough for her to break free. Samuel didn't waste the opportunity. He tackled Holloway and they crashed into a display of canned goods. The derringer went off again, the bullet embedding itself in the floor. The two men grappled, trading blows as they fought for control of the weapon. Olivia scooped up Thomas and retreated behind the counter, her heart pounding as she watched her husband fight for their lives. A sickening crack sounded as Holloway struck Samuel with a heavy can, opening a gash on his forehead. Blood streamed into Samuel's eyes, blinding him momentarily. Holloway seized the advantage, pinning Samuel and raising the derringer. "Say goodbye to your husband, Olivia," he snarled. The shot that rang out wasn't from the derringer. Sheriff Miller stood in the doorway, his smoking pistol still aimed at Holloway, who slumped forward, a red stain spreading across his back. "Seems I got back to town just in time," the sheriff said grimly, moving forward to check that Holloway was no longer a threat. Olivia rushed to Samuel, setting Thomas down safely before helping her husband sit up. "Are you all right?" she asked frantically, using her apron to wipe blood from his face. "I am now," he said, pulling her close with one arm while reaching for Thomas with the other. "You were amazing, Olivia, so brave." "I was terrified," she admitted. "When he threatened Thomas, I just reacted." Sheriff Miller helped Samuel to his feet. "That cut needs stitching, but you'll live. Holloway won't be troubling anyone else ever again." Later that night, after the doctor had stitched Samuel's wound and Thomas had finally settled to sleep, the couple sat on their porch, watching the stars emerge. "I thought I'd lost you today," Olivia said softly, her head resting on Samuel's shoulder. "Never," he promised, pressing a kiss to her hair. "I made you a vow, remember? My heart is yours forever." She fingered the ruby pendant which had somehow survived the day's violence intact. "When James first stole this, I thought I'd never feel whole again. I didn't realize then that a heart isn't something that can be taken and kept in a box or worn around your neck. It's given freely, and it grows stronger with every challenge." Samuel took her hand, bringing it to his lips. "You're a wise woman, Mrs. Young." "And you're a brave man, Mr. Young," she replied with a smile. "Our son is lucky to have you as his father." The years that followed were kind to the Young family. Their small farm prospered, and the store became a central fixture in Gunnison's growing community. Thomas was joined by two sisters, Emma and Grace, each as spirited as their mother and as steadfast as their father. Samuel never returned to bounty hunting, finding that the greatest rewards came from watching his children grow and building a life with Olivia. There were difficult times, drought years when crops failed, a scarlet fever epidemic that nearly took Emma, the fire that destroyed half the town including their store, but through it all, their partnership remained unshakable. They rebuilt the store, larger than before, adding a second floor that became Gunnison's first lending library. Olivia's dream of bringing books to the community was fully realized, and she took particular pleasure in teaching children to read in the cozy corner she designed especially for them. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Samuel surprised Olivia with a gift, the deed to a larger property outside town, with enough acreage for the ranch he'd always dreamed of building. Their children, now teenagers, were ecstatic at the prospect of raising more horses and cattle. "Are you sure?" Olivia asked that night as they lay in bed, the deed carefully placed on their bedside table. "The store has been our life for so long. Thomas is old enough to manage it now with our guidance," Samuel said, "and you've seen how natural Emma is with the horses. This ranch will be for all of us, but especially for our children's futures." Olivia reached up to touch the lines that time had etched around his eyes, evidence of years of laughter and occasional sorrow. "You're still giving me your heart after all these years. And I'll keep giving it to you for all the years to come," he promised, drawing her close. The Young ranch became as much a Gunnison institution as their store had been. Samuel's skill with horses was matched only by Emma's natural affinity for the animals, while Thomas expanded the store to include a lucrative trade in ranch supplies. Grace, the youngest, surprised everyone by showing an aptitude for medicine, eventually studying to become one of Colorado's first female doctors. Through it all, the ruby pendant remained around Olivia's neck, a symbol not of what had been taken from her, but of what she had found a love strong enough to weather any storm, a family built on trust and courage, and a heart freely given and joyfully received. On their 50th wedding anniversary, surrounded by children, grandchildren, and the entire town of Gunnison, Samuel and Olivia danced under the stars, as much in love as they had been on their wedding day. "Do you remember what you said to me that day in the store?" Olivia asked, her hair now silver but her eyes still bright with life. "When I told you James had taken my heart," Samuel smiled, pulling her closer despite his arthritic knees. "I remember every moment with you, my love. I said I'd give you mine instead." "And you did," she whispered, resting her head against his chest where his heart still beat steadily for her. "You gave me your heart, and it's been the greatest gift of my life." As they swayed together, their grandchildren watching with romantic sighs and their children with knowing smiles, Samuel and Olivia Young were living proof that even in the wild and often unforgiving West, Love could not only survive but flourish, especially when one heart was freely given to heal another. The ruby pendant caught the light of the lanterns, gleaming as brightly as it had on that fateful day over 50 years before, when a broken-hearted woman and a weary bounty hunter found in each other not just the healing of past wounds, but the promise of a future neither could have imagined alone, a future built on the foundation of one simple truth: that the heart's greatest power lies not in what it holds, but in what it gives.